It's another night of NBA playoff action on this Tuesday, May the 9th. Only one game on the schedule for tonight, but it is a good one as the Houston Rockets travel to San Antonio to face the Spurs, Game 5 of their series. We're going to talk about that one. We're also going to talk about tomorrow night's Game 5 in the Eastern Conference between the Washington Wizards and the Boston Celtics. Two fantastic games here, really getting serious in these NBA playoffs now. Great time of year for an NBA fan. Let's start in San Antonio where the Spurs host the Rockets. San Antonio, a 5.5-point favorite at BetSafe. 214 the total in this game. This series now tied at 2 games apiece after the Rockets were able to pick up a 125-104 win in Game 4. Each team has now won one game on the other's home court. Look, heading into this series, I guess the main question was, would the Spurs be able to slow down this great Houston Rockets offense that was second only to Golden State throughout the regular season in terms of points scored and set a new NBA record in terms of three-pointers made? So the Rockets behind James Harden in that Mike D'Antoni system have been nearly impossible to stop this season, and it was going to be interesting to see if the playoff Spurs could slow down this Houston Rockets team. And also, if the Spurs, if they couldn't slow down the Rockets, if they were going to be able to score with the Rockets. We know the Spurs very proficient offensively, and the Rockets not particularly good defensively. And you might say after 4 games in this series, with the series tied 2 games apiece, that we haven't yet gotten any conclusive answers. But I believe we have. I believe that question has been answered. And the answer is no. If the question is, will San Antonio be able to slow down Houston, or will they be able to keep up with Houston if the Rockets are hitting their shots? The answer to both of those is an emphatic no. Now, really, the story of this series has been, have the Rockets been hitting open three-point shots? We know this Houston team just bombs away from the outside. In their 2 wins, they have scored 125 and 126 points. They have shot 44% from three-point range in both those games. They have made 41 combined three-pointers in those games. In the Rockets' 2 losses in this series, they have scored 96 points and 92 points, shooting 32% from 3 in one of the games and just 30% from 3 in the other game. Now, you look at San Antonio, on the other hand, they've been pretty consistent. They've scored 103 points or fewer in 3 of the 4 games this series. They did explode for 121 in Game 2, but again, even in that game, they didn't put up the type of point total the Rockets have in their 2 wins. So look, Houston is able to get what they want. Life has been tough for James Harden with Kawhi Leonard dogging him for most of the game, but he had a better game in Game 4 with 28 points and 12 assists. The fact of the matter is the Rockets, as has been the case for them throughout this season and in the last series against Oklahoma City, they just have more weapons than their opponent. I mean, if it's not James Harden, it's the guys off the bench like Eric Gordon and Lewis Williams. Gordon with 22 points in Game 4, Williams with 13. Or it's a guy like Ryan Anderson, who great three-point shooter. Trevor Ariza can go off offensively at any time. So you look at this Houston team, there are so many ways they can beat you offensively. And obviously Harden, the straw that stirs the drink. But look, the Rockets have done what they do in this series. And when they've been able to make shots, they've scored 125, 126 points and have blown out the Spurs. And so really, the Spurs are just hoping that the Rockets are going to miss those shots. And for me, that's not good enough. I saw the Spurs get blown out in Game 4 despite LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard both shooting over 50%, despite a breakout game from Jonathan Simmons with 17 points off the bench. So it's not like it all went wrong for San Antonio in Game 4. It's just that when the Rockets are hitting their shots, the Spurs can't beat them. And maybe the Rockets will be off here in this Game 5, but I'm not willing to back San Antonio as a 5.5-point favorite when I'm just hoping for the Rockets to miss shots, especially when the Rockets, it's not like, I mean, they have a lot of great shot makers. I mean, when you talk about Gordon and Lewis Williams and, again, Ryan Anderson, Ariza, and certainly James Harden, they have a lot of guys who can do damage. They can afford a couple of those guys to have off nights. I mean, we've seen Anderson has had really a tough postseason, but the Rockets have so many weapons, it's been enough. And I believe they're going to win this series. Even though San Antonio now has the home court advantage back, series tied 2 games apiece, 2 of the final 3 games will be in San Antonio. Houston, to me, looks like the better team. They look like they're able to get what they want on the offensive end. And we've seen this Rockets team, I wouldn't rely on them missing shots for 2 out of 3 games, which is what it's going to take for San Antonio to win this series. So I like Houston here in Game 5 as a 5.5-point road underdog in San Antonio. I know we haven't seen a close game yet in this series, but it could happen. You never know. Those 5.5 points could come in handy. Moving on now to the Eastern Conference, where the Boston Celtics host the Washington Wizards, Game 5 of their series. This one also tied 2 games apiece. Celtics a 4.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 215 the total here. Now, Boston was able to pick up games 1 and 2 in Boston. We know the Wizards have been a different team this year at home and on the road. Been so much better at home they have been on the road, and this series we've seen that. Boston again picking up games 1 and 2 in Boston. Then this series shift to Washington. A total different story. The Wizards winning the last 2 games by 46 combined points. Don't know if you saw Game 4. It was very competitive. I believe it was tied at halftime. Then the Wizards went on a 26-0 run in the second half. Washington clearly much more explosive than this Boston team right now. I mean, Boston, maybe more than any team remaining in the playoffs now that Oklahoma City has been eliminated, the Celtics rely on one guy for their offense. And it's not that they don't have other guys who can score. Certainly guys like Al Horford and Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder at times, they can score the basketball, but Isaiah Thomas is the guy that makes this Celtics offense work. And when he is going off, like he did in Game 2 of this series, yes, the Celtics can be an explosive offensive team. But in the last couple of games, and look, it's not like Thomas shot the ball poorly in Game 4. He didn't. But he just wasn't that all-world, unstoppable 40-point guy. And if he's not that guy, I'm not sure the Celtics have enough horsepower at this point to stay with Washington the way John Wall is playing. Look, John Wall has been, I know Isaiah Thomas had a phenomenal Game 2, great Game 1 as well, but John Wall has been the best player in this series. 27 points and 12 assists in Game 4, and that was despite a slow start from the field in terms of shooting. I think Wall was 0 for his first 8 or 9, but just kept attacking. The Celtics do not have a guy who can stop him. And when Bradley Beal steps up and becomes Wall's partner in crime, as he has been throughout much of the season, and as he was in Game 4, pouring in 29 points on 11 of 16 shooting, this Wizards backcourt is downright scary, and I just don't know if the Celtics have anything for him. And look, my opinion has changed over these past 4 games. Heading into this series, I thought Boston was going to win it. Backed Boston in both games 1 and 2. They covered in both of those games. We're really fortunate in Game 2, however. It went to overtime. Celtics pulled out the cover in overtime. But through 4 games, it looks like to me the Wizards are the better team. And I think Brad Stevens, Boston coach, I think he's thinking the same thing. Brad Stevens clearly still searching with his lineup, with the rotation. Started Amir Johnson in Game 4. First time in a while Johnson has started for these Celtics. 11 guys for Boston playing at least 5 minutes in Game 4. So again, it seems like Brad Stevens still searching for that perfect rotation a little bit, for that key, for that little extra, I don't know the word I'm looking for here, but that little extra jolt like they got in the last series when Stevens inserted Gerald Green into the starting lineup against Chicago, and it really opened up that Boston offense, and they won 4 straight games against the Bulls. Stevens, looking for some lineup magic like that, hasn't yet been able to find it. So I think that's a bad sign if you're Boston, that the coach is searching 5 games into the series, and I don't blame him after what we've seen. We know the Wizards starting 5 logs more minutes than any starting 5 in the NBA, and the Wizards continue to rely heavily on that starting 5 throughout these playoffs. In addition to the backcourt, of course, of Wall and Beal, we're talking Marcin Gortat at center, Markieff Morris, and Otto Porter at the small forward. Porter, by the way, has done an excellent job defensively in this series. Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley, a combined 4 for 18 shooting in Game 4. So some of the Celtics supporting cast has struggled here these past couple of games. But again, the Celtics really need Isaiah Thomas to step up and be Superman again. I know this Game 5 is in Boston. I know the Celtics have been really good at home this season, and the Wizards, again, have been a different team on the road. They haven't been nearly as good on the road as they have been at home. But I've come to the conclusion now that the Wizards are better than the Celtics. I think they're going to win this series, so I'm going to take them plus 4.5 in this Game 5. So there you have it, folks. I like both underdogs on these Tuesday, Wednesday games. Give me Houston plus 5.5 in San Antonio on Tuesday night, and I'll take the Washington Wizards as a 4.5-point road dog in Boston on Wednesday night. Folks, I wish you best of luck, whatever you decide to do in these games, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. Enjoy these NBA playoffs.